I'm always curious, doing this with Words Ascent in the last 2 years. I'm always curious, which different branches of, service that guys come from. So at this point, feel free to just yell out. So,
Army. Law enforcement.
Okay. What'd you do in law enforcement?
I'm a police officer.
Okay. Cool. Got any other cops here? Any police officers?
Yeah.
All right. And I imagine that you guys have all done some sort of military service. Am I right?
I do not.
You didn't? So you just law enforcement?
I work Department of Corrections.
Okay. Law enforcement. Right. Okay. Cool. It's really interesting because I know, I used to play professional football, and once that whole period of life ends, sometimes, I know for myself, I felt sometimes like I forgot who I was. But one thing you always got to remember, I know as a kid looking at people on television playing sports, and even in society, the role that you guys play as law enforcement, as people that are in the armed services. One thing I always had to remember for myself is, in the eyes of everybody else, you guys are superheroes. Think about it. Just, when you think about it in a deep way, when things go wrong, they used to call you, or they still do call you. And how many times people's situation, their circumstance could have turned really ugly if it wasn't for you. And so even, though a lot of the things we're working on here is because after the fact, or maybe you're still, doing the job that you've been doing, it can feel tough and we can feel like we don't know what we're doing. You got to remember, you're a superhero. No matter how you feel, it's just maybe how you feel right now, but as we go deeper into this, I imagine you'll see how you're able to let go of the feeling and kind of recapture that feeling of being that superhero that you felt like, back when you were in service, or, when you first went into law enforcement. It's really funny. I was talking to my coach the other day. Now, my coach, he's from Hawaii. I love this guy. Now, my coach, he's always talking about what his coach, his uncle, I believe, what he used to say in the ancient Hawaiian language, "Aohe pau ko ike ko halau," which translates to realize not all learnings come from your school. You don't know what you don't know. And this whole entire week, all the things you guys have been experiencing is really about opening yourself up to other ways of thinking. And other ways of thinking can lead you to other ways of being, doing, and having your life experience now in this next chapter. So I always like to keep, what my coach said in mind. Now, my name is Chukky Okobi. I am an integrative psychology professional. Work on mindset, belief change, and emotional breakthroughs. I work mainly with former NFL football players and other former athletes, as well as business leaders who are transitioning, whether it's into a different way of leading or into retirement and going into the next chapter of life, helping them rediscover who they really are deep down. And as I mentioned before, I played professional football. I played my college football at Purdue University and was drafted by my hometown Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I do live in Kansas City now, and I'm a big believer that when we cheer for our favorite team, we're actually cheering for our community. The players come and go, the coaches come and go, but those of us that live here in Kansas City, we're here to stay. So, just for the record, I am a Chiefs fan too. I know a lot of the transitions of leaving service or leaving law enforcement can be challenging, and it can lead to, just to keep a big picture here. I know a lot of situations we run into can lead to feelings of anger, sadness, hopelessness. I remember a period after I finished playing football and was laying in bed just staring at the ceiling, thinking to myself, is this it? Is, playing professional football, going to the NFL, is that the highest level of success? Is that the best I'm ever gonna feel? At that point I was maybe 30, 31 years old. And I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt with the story I'm gonna share with you guys today, that it's not over, that there is hope, in that, everything you've been through in your various vocations and service, you may not know that you don't know, but you already have all the tools you need to succeed in this chapter and going forward. It's a lot of life left. I don't see any elderly people here, you got a lot of life left. And there's a lot more to discover, not only about life in this next chapter, but about yourself. So I want to tell you guys a story, and it's really my story and how I discovered what I call the basic instructions and what I want to share with you guys today. Now, I just want you to pay attention to the energy of this moment that I'm about to share with you. Because believe it or not, it may seem right now like it doesn't have anything to do with this group, but I believe after the next couple hours together, you'll get exactly what I'm saying.
Davies holds Joe Tiller. Great job. Indeed it was. Now we go to Jack Jack.
Well, Joe Tiller just got the congratulations from the opposing coach, Bob Davey. It's pandemonium and coach out for years.
I hope we have a whole lot more of these. It's a great effort for Luke. There's so many more.
Does this elevate your Dr. Golf next year? Does this elevate your Dr. Golf next year?
I can hear you. It's a great
Does
effort.
this elevate your Dr. Golf next year? Man, it's crazy.
Just save yourself, partner. Crazy indeed. At least for one day, that offense is validated. And how? The Boilermakers become Spoilermakers one more time.
Now, I imagine you may be wondering, what does this have to do with any of us? If you can believe it, that was the first college football game I ever played. It was the first time I'd ever been on TV in my entire life, and I was only 18 years old. 300-pound offensive lineman crowd surfing. It was amazing. But I'm a storyteller, and I want to tell you guys a story of how that moment happened, because it's a lot deeper than you might think. And you know how we all came together today, because you actually do have the ability to create that exact same energy in your life right now. I'm going to show you how easy and simple, a lot simpler than you might think. You know, this is the same impact you can have, that impact we had on our community, on our school, on our team, our program. You have that same ability to create that energy in your life right now. Now, I like to, again, I'm a storyteller, so I want to keep this light, comfortable, and just really explain things in what I like to call NFL, or normal functioning language. Because I'm a psychology professional, I could get real scientific and put you to sleep with all of that jargon. I want to keep it real simple. So let's just go deeper into it. I'll tell you a little bit about me. Now, I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And, you know, growing up in a house with my mom as the only parent for me and my 4 siblings, I'm sure you can imagine she had more important things on her mind. You know, my extracurricular activities really weren't her main focus right now. You know, there was a lot of sadness, a lot of fear, a lot of tension in our household, you know, issues with my dad and whatnot. And so home was somewhere I just didn't want to be as a kid. Just always find a reason. The kid who came home, took off his school clothes, and just went right back outside. I don't want to be here. And so for me, with my parents not getting along, we actually ended up having to move out of Pittsburgh when I was young. And would you believe, I ended up going to 6 different schools before high school. I was a new kid all the time. So I know that feeling of feeling alone and not really fitting into my world that I found myself in. But I really found solace and comfort through sports, because when I was playing sports, you know, I really loved being a valued member of the tribe that I found myself in. And not only that, being seen as a leader, you know, so it was just this deep down, I had this different level of self-worth, really loved who I was in those moments. And so you can imagine, in the context of this team, the person who I focused on the most was the coach. You know, especially not having my dad at home, I naturally just collected father figures. You know, men who I looked up to and who I believed were examples of what it meant to be a good and successful person. I remember I would watch everything he did and hang on to every single word he said. And I just remember thinking to myself, that's exactly how I want to be. I want to be just like him when I grow up. You know, so, you know, this intense love for sports really attracted me to men like this. And, you know, going through that deep love is what drove me to really decide at a very early age that sports was what I wanted to do. It wasn't about TV. I mean, I'm sure you guys have children. there's no 7, 8, 9-year-old kids who are thinking about TV. It's the love for doing what they do. And that love was so deep that it drove me to have that vision of playing professional sports. Now, after all of that, I wasn't a very highly recruited high school athlete. I only had one scholarship offer coming out of high school, that's it. And the only scholarship offer I had was to Purdue University. So when I first got to Purdue was, to say the least. Let's just keeping it light. But I'll never forget that first experience of meeting one of the coaches who made the biggest difference in my life, and that was Joe Tiller. Now, Joe Tiller wasn't the head coach when I first got to Purdue. He wasn't the coach that gave me this opportunity to play college football. My first coach, the only coach who I believed in me because he was the only one to offer me a scholarship, was Jim Coletto. Now, he eventually went on to coach in several NFL teams, but this coach is the one that believed in me enough to put his money where his mouth is and gave me that scholarship to play Big Ten football. And then all of a sudden, after my first semester, I was 17 years old, I redshirted, didn't play it at all that season, and then coach resigned. And so you can understand why he resigned, because up until that point, Purdue football was not very good. I mean, we sucked. Most people would have said we were hopeless. So I'll never forget that first meeting when Coach Tiller came in as the new coach. I mean, I'll never forget that first impression. I mean, just picture it. This guy, he had this big Burt Reynolds mustache, because he came from Wyoming. Wyoming's team are the Cowboys. This guy was a real cowboy now. Had a Burt Reynolds mustache. He had this big belt buckle. He looked like the heavyweight champion of the world. His boots were really impressive, sexy even, And of course he had the cowboy charm and disposition to match. So coach comes in, stands in front of the group. He was a soft-spoken guy, but really intense. Didn't really raise his voice much, but was just always really, you could feel the energy of this guy. So he comes in front of the room and he says, guys, when you think about where you are right now, realize we are going to be, do, and have that feeling of pride in who we are. We're going to have that. You're going to hear it. Everybody in this industry is going to be talking about you and what you guys are about to do. And you're not going to believe it when you see it. When you see all of your fans coming down onto this field to celebrate what you just did. Listen to me very carefully, guys. We are going to be, do, and have everything that you envisioned when you first came to play football in the Big Ten Conference. We're going to have it. I promise you. We're going to have that. Now, you can imagine a lot of guys were thinking, yeah, that's definitely what I want. Exactly what he's talking about. This is exactly what I want. But wondering, how are we going to get over all the mistakes that we made in the past to achieve that level of success he's talking about? Now, you would imagine a guy coming in here to turn this program around. I mean, Purdue had lost for 12, 13 years in a row at that point. You would think he would come in ruling with an iron fist and thinking you've got to put all these new rules and regulations to really whip these guys into shape. But this guy, this coach was different. So as he's telling us the story, he says, guys, on this team, we only got one rule. Whether it has to do with your conduct as a student in the school, academics, football, if you stick to this one rule, everything you want is yours. That rule is what we call the do right rule. Do what you're supposed to do, the way you're supposed to do it, when it's supposed to be done, and just do it that way every time. Believe what I'm telling you right now. If you simply follow these basic instructions I'm giving you, everything you want in your life now and in the future is yours. Wow, I mean, this guy, my mind was just blown at this point. He's definitely got my attention right now. So as, I'm totally focused in on this all of a sudden familiar stranger, this old man goes in a completely different direction and started talking about the Wizard of Oz. I mean, this guy honestly is talking about the Wizard of Oz. All of a sudden we're talking about Big Ten football to the Wizard of Oz, and it's like, what is this guy talking about? It's funny because my wife Felicia, who's here with me, we moved here to Kansas City 5 years. Can you guys believe I met people in Kansas, and I live on the Kansas side. I met people here who never saw this movie. I thought it was a requisite when I first moved here. But you just don't know what you don't know. So Coach Tiller, he's telling us the story that we've already heard. He was like, guys, don't act tough. I know you guys know the story. And even though I had heard this story before, I never thought of it in this way. It just never sounded like the way he put it. And so Coach is telling us the story. He says, guys, you remember, Dorothy is in a crisis. All of a sudden, everything's in vivid color now. She's surrounded by all these little people. What is that about? And who the fuck is that? Why does she look like that? And her breath and her attitude, that's not working for me. What is she yelling about? Where did these shoes come from? You know what? Fuck this. I want to go home. I just want to go home to Kansas. This is crazy. I don't want any parts of this. Now, Dorothy, believing that she herself did not have the ability to get her desired result, she started asking everyone else, where should I go? What should I do? Who can save me? And what'd they tell her? I know. Go see the wizard. Follow Yellow Brick Road. Now, she's sitting there thinking, well, I can't do it. So I guess this is advice I just have to follow. So she goes down the Yellow Brick Road. Now, fellas, you remember who she met on that trip? Those 3 people that almost got her killed? You remember that. The first one doesn't think he's smart enough. The second one doesn't think he's tough enough or has the heart. And the third one doesn't think he has the courage. So with this thinking, they all go down the Yellow Brick Road. Now, Dorothy overcame a lot of things on this road. Trees coming alive, flying monkeys, no problem. She got past that to what she believed was the solution to get to the wizard, only to learn what? There's no wizard. Dorothy, if you want this desired result, if you want to get back to where you're comfortable and feel safe, you're just going to have to take the necessary actions to make it happen. It's on you, girl. And so she's sitting here, why does this have to be so hard? I'm not asking for much. I just want to go home. Am I stuck in this situation forever? And then Coach just paused for what felt like an eternity. And he said, you're in Dorothy's shoes. What are you going to do? So what's the relevance of this story? Let me wet my whistle for a minute. Now, I remember feeling like Dorothy when Coach Tiller first came to school, when he first came to Purdue, because I felt comfortable with the coach that gave me the scholarship. I knew I had support. I knew I had somebody behind me who believed in me, and all of a sudden that person was gone. It was like the pain of losing my dad all over again. And so I found myself in this weird energy. I remember there was a week there where I was just hiding in the bathroom stall in my dorm, crying to myself inside, just not knowing what to do. But you get to a point where it's just like, enough of this. I got to do something. I mean, I'm on scholarship. I'm on this team. I'm enrolled in this school. I got to make this work. So what I did is I went to this used bookstore. And I found something there that really changed everything. And one of the biggest things that I learned from what I found in this bookstore is remembering that we all have experience. If you go back in your memory, we all have the experience of learning what it was like to learn. I'm sure you can relate. You know, thinking back in your mind, maybe you were in a classroom with other people or with somebody older and more experienced. But in this moment, you learned what it was like to learn. Everything sounded true and it feels real. So these basic instructions I'm about to share with you guys, think of it like this voice of experience and support. So when you think about what we're about to learn today, you can hear this voice. And if you listen, I mean really listen, you can hear this voice speaking to you right now from the very center core of who you are. This is your voice of experience and support. I have a voice like that. You have this voice too. And even in the quiet moments of your private thoughts, you can always hear this voice guiding you, pushing you, moving you ever closer to what it is that you actually desire. So when I got to this bookstore, I didn't know what I was looking for. You know, I just walked in, and it was almost like the book just jumped off the shelf at me. I said, that's it. And the title of this book is The Secret of Creating Your Future by Dr. Tad James. And this is when I was first introduced to what I'm going to share with you, what I call the basic instructions. So, you know, I remember the other day I was talking to a business leader here in Kansas City about hiring me to speak to her company, and it was really funny. She was like, "That is amazing. You mean to tell me you were born in Pittsburgh, you were drafted by the Steelers, and you won the Super Bowl? That is amazing." You know, I always wondered what that would feel like to win the Super Bowl. I bet it feels spectacular, am I right? And she is right. Winning the Super Bowl is a feeling. The thing that you don't know is it's a feeling that you already know deep down. I mean, we all have memories, right? So just go back into your memory and remember those moments that gave you those butterflies, the feeling of excitement in your stomach, the sensations, the moments that made your pulse race and your breath shallow. You hear your heart beating in your ears. You see those things now, things that took you to levels of pleasure, satisfaction, fulfillment that felt so right. It almost feels wrong. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the kind of feeling that just spins around and around in your mind like a vinyl record obsessing. You try to stop thinking about this, and there it goes again. Obsessing. You just obsess about it because it feels so good. You just want to feel this way all the time, forever. Now, if you can remember a memory in your own experience that feels exactly like that, congratulations. You know exactly what it feels like to win the Super Bowl. So think about it like this. Before we get into the basic instructions and how easy it is to regain control of your mind, your emotions, your life, everything that we're learning here this week with what Mike's put together, all the different practitioners, they're all really basic instructions when you think about it. If we recognize, if we just go back to that time when we learned what it was like to learn, open ourselves up, and actually just follow the instructions that Mike or any of these practitioners gave, you might see a different result. You're gonna see a different result if we just allow ourselves to learn. And so when we talk about our thoughts, our emotions, and the actions that come from that, you know, just recognize that all of us here are teaching basic instructions. And if we just open ourselves to learning something new, you'd be surprised how easy it is to get out of whatever situation that we feel, the negative situation, whatever negative vibration we feel is the problem. You'd be surprised the steps and how easy it can be to get out. So what we're talking about, and what I learned from that book in the bookstore that day, was about NLP. And a lot of people, what is NLP? You guys heard of Tony Robbins? That's what he does, NLP. But NLP is not normal functioning language. So I want to just simplify to make it real easy for you. So but NLP was what this book first introduced me to. And I mean, hey, I ended up starting 4 years at Purdue, got drafted and went to the Super Bowl. So there may be some value here, I don't know. So what is NLP? NLP, the N stands for neuro, refers to your neurology, your mind, your brain. Linguistic refers to language and communication, words. And programming refers to how that neural language functions. How do words function in your mind? What do they actually do? And that's what really helped me to gain control of my mind and emotions at a point when my first coach left and I thought everything was over. But once I learned to control what was going on inside me, controlling what was going on around me became exponentially easier. So that's what we're talking about here. Now there's four concepts that I want to present you with before I give you the actual basic instructions, the steps of regaining control. And so these are the four concepts of mind mastery that I always like to explain to people before I go deeper into the specifics of what to do. Perception is interpretation, cause and effect, mind-body energy connection, and responsibility for change. So we'll start with perception as interpretation. Now, I'll be the first to admit, that's not normal functioning language. People don't talk like that. Perception is interpretation. However, if you think deeper into it, this is actually a pretty simple concept. if you just look at the dictionary definition of those two specific words. Perception is interpretation. Perception and interpretation. Perception. Perception simply means the state of being or process of becoming aware of something through your five senses. I smelled something. I tasted something. But since we're not dogs, what's more pertinent is what I heard, what I saw, and what I felt. Just becoming aware of something. I could feel how offensively hot it is outside through my kinesthetic senses. Now, you look at the word interpretation. The word interpretation is the action of explaining the meaning of that which I perceive. The operative word here is I, what I perceive. So when you put it together, perception is interpretation simply means my life is whatever story I tell about it. Whatever words I use to describe my life, that's how I'm going to interpret what's going on. And we'll go deeper into that. You'll see how this makes sense. You'll probably relate to it. And so that's what the first concept, perception is interpretation, my life is the story I tell. Cause and effect. Cause and effect is an important equation. It's a law of physics. But cause and effect is actually the equation to understand, to gain a sense of empowerment. Empowerment is a fancy word for a feeling of control. And so think about it like this. I always want to be on the cause side of this equation. And that is to say, I am the cause of my experience. And a lot of people say, well, what do you mean I'm the cause of my experience? You cause your experience through your interpretation. A lot of times we think the words we use describe our reality. They actually create it inside. And that's where these two concepts come together, and it's so important to understand. So we always want to recognize that I am the cause of my experience. And a lot of people say, yeah, but, the two most dangerous words in the English language, yeah, but. You say but enough, you sound like a chicken. So here's the thing. You say, yeah, but I didn't do this, I didn't do that, this person did that. Oh, that's the effect side. To be on the effect side is to say I am a victim of the effect of my environment. I'm a victim because my wife did this, because of COVID, because of whoever's in the White House. I'm a victim. I'm suffering the effects of whatever's happening out there. And even put it into simpler language. The difference between being at cause or being at effect is the difference between saying, she pissed me off versus I'm angry. If she pissed me off, I'm powerless. Because I can't do anything to control my wife. Trust me. I'm sure you can relate. But if I'm angry, I'm causing that through the story I'm telling about her. And if I'm angry, I can do something about this. And that's where the power, becoming empowered, really comes in. So when we talk about the third concept, mind-body energy connection, that is simply to say that our mind is connected to our physical body. Our physical body is connected to our energy. And when we're talking about energy, what we're talking about are emotions. Most people don't realize emotions are just energy in motion. Think about it, emotions. And so this mind-body energy connection is something to really take into consideration. Each one affects the other. It's not necessarily just sequential. What we do physically is going to affect our thoughts or in our mind, which then is going to change the way the energy moves within our central nervous system. So I'll give you guys an example. Just play along with me on this. What I want you to do is right where you're sitting, sit in your chair and just slouch down like this. With your head tucked and just all the energy going down. All right, good. And from this position, what I want you to do is get excited. It's tough, right? Because of what you're doing with your physical body. The energy changes based on what you're doing with your body. Now just sit up straight. What I want you to do is get depressed. It feels different, right? it's that simple. Is we got to understand all of these things affect each other. And the energy, how we change the energy, we're going to go real deep into that one here. But understand that all these different things affect one another. What I do, my actions, the words I'm using in my mind, and the emotions that those words trigger inside. So just be aware of this concept. And the fourth one is responsibility for change. This is the simplest one. I'm going to keep this one short. It really goes back to cause and effect. So if I am the cause of my experience, right? If I'm the cause of my experience and I don't like what I'm experiencing, it's my responsibility to change it. Not hers. Trust me, we've been back and forth on this one. It's not hers, it's mine. Just recognizing that I am responsible for changing whatever I'm feeling or experiencing in my life. And that's that. I'll give you a chance to write that down for anything you guys might have missed. But, you know, it's funny because after I went through a lot, went through depression, I had medication, all kinds of stuff. I was in the hospital. After I was done playing football, I was struggling for a couple of years. One of the most interesting things is what got me out of there, got me off of 4 medications, haven't had a TBI symptom at least 4 or 5 years. The things that got me out of that dark place, I actually learned through football. It's funny, our experiences, a lot of times the answers are in here. It's just that we're having trouble accessing them, and I'll explain that one here in a minute. But all the answers to solve whatever you might be experiencing, you already have. And whatever training you have, whether it be law enforcement, whether it be military, they gave you the answers. They did. We just got to access them. It actually reminds me of the year we won the Super Bowl in 2005. Now, if you go to Wikipedia and say, okay, who won the Super Bowl in 2005? Super Bowl 40. It's going to say Pittsburgh Steelers. What it doesn't tell you is the story of how that came together. Now, going into that season, we were the favorites to win the Super Bowl because the year before, in 2004, we won 15 games out of 16. And the only game we lost was week 2. And we had a rookie quarterback. You know, so 05, #1 defense coming back, Jerome Bettis, all that stuff, so we were favorites. But all of a sudden in that season, we lost 3 consecutive games in the middle of it. And if we lost one more time, our dreams of being Super Bowl champions were over because we wouldn't even make the playoffs. All of a sudden, everybody's panicked. I'm hearing it all over the radio. The Steelers are way too deep in a hole right now. They're out. But of course, when you look at the papers, you see nothing but positive quotes. I remember saying to a journalist myself, hey, relax. We got this. We'll just keep going deeper into the season, 1 game at a time. Now, coach, our head coach, Bill Cowher, now think about it. There's a reason this guy is a Hall of Fame coach. Because coach had a real feel for how this group was feeling right now. He had a handle on it. You know, and I really thought after that 3rd loss he would come to this meeting and tear us a new one for not playing well enough. But what coach said in this meeting right now completely changed the way I looked at what it's going to take to get our goals. So coach comes in, stands in front of the group, everyone goes silent, and he says, guys, when you think about where you are right now in this season, realize that you don't know what you don't know. And believe it or not, it's what you don't know that you don't know that's running the show right now called your career and your life. So think about this for a minute. Since you don't know what you don't know, how do you know what you believe you do know is right? Don't answer me now, just relax and consider what I'm saying. You don't know what you don't know. And I remember sitting there thinking, I don't know what I don't know. Okay, all right, coach, I can agree with what you're saying. Tell me what I don't know. Now, what I'm gonna share with you isn't what he told us, but that moment is what helped me get out. is really developing a deep sense of curiosity to learn what I don't even know I don't know. We live on a planet, there's 8 million people, God knows how many other living organisms, and each one of us has a perspective, which means there's 8 million, at least we're talking about humans, we got 8 billion different worlds, 8 billion different realities, and none of them are gonna match mine. There's whatever I don't even know, I don't know, there's somebody out there that's an expert. There's somebody out there that has that missing piece of information. And all I have to decide is the same determination that got me to the NFL. I'm gonna apply that to finding it. I wanna live, I wanna thrive, I wanna feel good again, and just decide I'm gonna get that information. So I'm gonna give you something that when we connect all the dots, you'll realize that you already knew this. Maybe you just never thought of it like this. One thing is, that book that I found in a bookstore, The Secret of Creating Your Future by Dr. Tad James. The funny thing is, the thing that I took away from that, I was 18 years old, and he was talking crazy. I mean, he was talking about Hawaii and energy and wizards, and it was a metaphor. And so I'm 18 years old, like, what is he talking about? I'm looking for some instructions here. But then all of a sudden, it clicked. I remember sitting in the bookstore, put the book down, and I said, I think I get what he's talking about. He's saying that the world that you think is out there is actually in your mind. And with this NLP stuff that he's talking about, I think what he's saying is you can control what's going on in your mind. And so my logic at 18 was this. If I can learn this NLP stuff and learn to control what's going on in my mind, well, then I can control my world. And I bought this old tattered book. It was old, it was a used book, so this book was old when I found it back in '96. And with what I learned in that book, in Joe Tiller's first 4 years at Purdue, I was the only starter, all 4 years. Got drafted to my hometown team, played a game in Detroit back in '06. And so that's just an example of the results of what I'm about to tell you. One thing that a lot of people don't realize is the only way we can make sense of the world outside of us is through these 5 senses. There's no other way. I have to read a text. I gotta hear somebody on the other end of the phone. I gotta feel the temperature outside to determine if I need a jacket or not. You can't make sense of your world without those 5 senses. Perception. And so one thing about the human mind, the human neurology, is it is powerful. So what we do is we collect all this sensory data, different sights, smells, sounds, through our nerves that run through our body. And we collect all that data in the brain. And this is where we interpret that information. We put labels to it, we put words to it. So here's the thing. How do we make sense of all of that data? When I show you this, when I go over this, it probably looks complicated because you've never seen it. But when I explain it, you'll see how simple this is. So the human neurology is so powerful. At any given second, including right now, we are each being bombarded by over 2 million bits of sensory data, sights, smells, sounds, all kinds of stuff just coming at us all the time. So anything that we take through the 5 senses, we're just going to call those external events. Something happened out here. I smell fire. Now, we're being bombarded by over 2 million bits of sights, sounds, smells, tastes, all kinds of stuff coming at us. Now, imagine you were in your office and 10 people are all talking to you at the same time. Could you make sense of anything anyone was saying? If we were consciously aware of all 2 million bits, that's what it would feel like. It's too much to make sense of. So what we do as human beings naturally is we go through a filtering process in which all that 2 million bits comes in and we delete, distort, and generalize the information. And those are different ways that we do it, through time and space, matter, energy, language. But that's not the important part. So we take in 2 million, we filter it down. Once you filter down the 2 million bits, all you're conscious of in any given moment is 126 out of 2 million. That's it. You can't consciously be aware of more than that. And so that 126 bits creates an idea, a picture in your mind of what you believe is happening. It's hot, it's cold, you know, that girl's pretty, whatever. And so that picture or sensation you get inside is what we'll call an internal representation. That something inside that 126 bits is what I'm telling the story about. That's the interpretation, because I'm interpreting this 126. So once I have the 126 and I interpret it, I put words to it, then it's gonna trigger an emotional response, mind, body, energy. So it's gonna trigger an emotional response. Once you have that 126 in your mind, the picture, you either love it, you don't love it, or somewhere in between. But you're gonna have some sort of change in your state based on that, your interpretation of that 126. And then once that emotion, once that energy is in motion, emotion, now I can feel it in my physiology. Mind, body, energy. It's just like, you know, when you're angry, you can feel it in your body. Just like when you're excited, you can feel it in your body. So this process, through the 5 senses, I take in 2 million bits, I filter it down to 126. Now I got a picture which triggers an emotional state that I can feel in my physiology. Realize this is the process by which every single human behavior is determined. And it happens like that. And once you have an awareness of this process, then we can start to learn to control it. This is what he's saying. If I could learn this NLP stuff, how words function in my mind, I can control my world. And that's what I'm sharing with you guys now. So as we go deeper into that, it reminds me of this concept I like to use to explain this. It's, how many of you guys have dogs? Dogs. Dog. Okay, good. Then this is definitely going to resonate with you. You guys ever heard the saying that, I remember growing up, I used to hear this all the time. Human beings only use 10% of their minds. How many people have heard that? It's not true. Science has proven that every single aspect of the brain has a function. What it is that for humans, there are 2 different ways of thinking, and it's not an even split. What you have is your conscious mind and your unconscious, or some people call it the subconscious mind. And so I like to explain this because psychology, jargon. Let me do my best to explain this in normal functioning language, or NFL. These 2 characters are your human mind. Look at the joy in this little boy's face. He's excited. He's got big plans for the future. He's got big plans for today. And he's got his best friend with him, because you would all agree, dog is man's best friend, right? And you notice he has the leash. That means he's in charge of this duo. He's the boss here. This little boy represents your conscious mind. Now, look at the size of this dog. What is that leash gonna do? This little kid can't control him with that leash. This dog could run him up and down the street, but he would never hurt this little boy on purpose. He loves this little boy more than anything, and wants nothing more for this boy than for him to have exactly what he wants in life. The thing is, he's a dog. Very simple-minded. He doesn't think in the complex ways that little humans do. Much bigger and stronger, but much simpler in his thinking. That's your unconscious mind. Now, the conscious mind, what's the conscious mind's job? The conscious mind actually only has one job. You look at the size difference, 10%. That's what they mean. You're conscious of 10% of what's going on. So that little boy, what is his job? He has one job. That's it. All the conscious mind does is make interpretations. Tell the story about the 126 bits. That's all the kid does. And so think about it like this. It's like, I'm a little behind on slides here, but the conscious mind, how many of you guys have kids? Okay? Kids this small play make-believe all the time, right? All he does is play make-believe all day with him. That's it. That's all the conscious mind is doing. All he does is tell stories to the dog, and the dog loves him so much he believes anything he says. So the conscious mind is in charge of, that's the interpretation, the stories that we tell. What's the unconscious mind's job? He's a lot bigger and stronger. Why? Because he's got many more jobs. He's got a lot more jobs. Most people never consider right now, what's keeping my heart beating? How do I continue to breathe deep as I sleep, eyes blinking, blood circulating, all these things we could agree right now that we're all doing, but you realize we're not consciously aware of or controlling. That's his job. Now, the dog's keeping me alive, it's keeping my heart beating. I don't know about you, I don't have a better friend than that. So understand, these two are best friends. To put it in simple terms, the conscious mind is in charge of thinking, analysis, logic, interpretation. The dog, the unconscious mind, is in charge of anything we do automatically, instincts. Now, I'm not a betting man, but if I was a betting man, I would bet this ring right here that never in your life did you ever wake up in the morning, put your 2 feet on the ground, do that big morning stretch, say, okay, I'm making a conscious decision right now to be pissed off at everybody. Anybody that looks at me wrong, if this dog doesn't get out of my, you know what would be better? I'm gonna be afraid. I'm gonna be racked with anxiety all day. I'm not gonna take any risks. As a matter of fact, let me just crawl under the bed right now. You've never in your life made the choice to be depressed or enraged, right? But it happens. It happens almost automatically sometimes. So what does that tell me? One of the dog's jobs, he's in charge of your emotions. The dog is in charge of your emotions. So think about it like this. Another job that the dog has is to keep all your memories, even the memories that you're not consciously aware of. The dog remembers everything. Everything, even since you were in the womb. Science has proven this. So check this out. The dog's in charge of all your memories. He keeps them organized for you. He's got your back. He's your best friend. And so imagine in your unconscious mind, you get this long hallway with all these different rooms on either side, right? And each room has a label on it. So over here, I have a room and it's labeled happy. I got a room next to that and it's labeled grateful. I got a room next to that and it's labeled love. So every single time my entire life that I felt this emotion we call happy, from the first time I felt it as a baby to that first sip of coffee this morning. What your unconscious mind says, what the dog says is, these memories feel the same to me. And so the happy memories, well, happy goes in the happy room. Every time I feel grateful, naturally grateful goes in the grateful room. Anytime you feel love, obviously when you feel love, love goes in the love room. Here's the thing about emotions. There's no such thing as good and bad. I mean, it's all the same dog. There's no such thing as good and bad. What we have is positive and negative. It's like a battery. It's a positive and negative side to the battery, but we can all agree there's no bad side to the battery, right? So on this side of the hallway, I got a room and it's labeled angry. I got a room next to that and it's labeled fear. Got a room next to that and it's labeled guilt. So every single time in my entire life that I felt this emotion that we call anger, from the first time somebody took my toy away, to when that bastard cut my wife off on 435 just on our way up here. The dog says, feels the same to me. And the anger memories go in the anger room. Fear goes in the fear room. Guilt goes in the guilt room. Here's the significance of what's going on in these rooms in the unconscious. Whichever room has the most stuff in it creates what I call an emotional filter through which I see my world. Remember, this is all in the unconscious. So looking at my world and my situation, whatever's going on in my life, through that emotional filter is like looking outside of myself at this tree. I can see everything clearly, or so I believe. I can see the blue sky, the white clouds, the green grass, the trunk of the tree. I see it all clearly, but I imagine there's something that we can all agree is 100% in this picture, but I can't consciously see it. It's the glass. So think about it like this. I think I'm seeing what's going on outside of me clearly, but could it be through the unconscious filter of my emotions? I mean the glass. I mean my emotions. So just understand that concept. As I look at that tree, I'm looking at it through the filter of that glass. And a lot of times we don't consider that. So when you think about the idea of filters, and remember I just went over how we create those stories, understand that dominant filter is going to determine the 126 bits you're aware of. You are going to become aware of 126 bits of that dominant filter. So if I have a filter of sadness, I'm going to constantly be aware of 126 bits consistent with that feeling. And there's almost 2 million bits that I'm filtering out. And so this is something, it's all unconscious, or as Coach Kyle will put it, what you don't know, you don't know. So recognize this. If I look at, going through that again. If the dominant unconscious emotion is going to determine the 126 bits I'm aware of in any given moment, I want my happy room to look like Michael Phelps' trophy room. I mean, you can't have too much happiness or too much gratitude. I should be calling up contractors to bust out these walls because you can't even imagine how much happiness I have coming up in my future. These rooms will never get you in trouble. The issue we run into is that sometimes our guilt room or our anger room looks like one of those A&E hoarder shows with newspapers from 1998 and a million litter boxes and dishes from 3 Thanksgivings ago in the sink. Just should be condemned. The issue we run into is what happens when our fear room looks like this. And we don't know that we don't know. And a lot of times that's why I'm picking up 126 and I believe the world is something to be afraid of. So here's the thing. A lot of times people say, yeah, but you don't know what I've been through. You don't know my story. Let me tell you my story. How do you know it's a filter? It's actually pretty simple. Basic instructions. We always, we all have that internal dialogue going. It's what I call the soundtrack to my life. As I'm going along, I'm narrating the story. So just listen to the story that you regularly tell yourself. And perhaps you know this one, but for a lot of times when there's a filter in place, people are playing the soundtrack that I call Limiting Beliefs Greatest Hits. The greatest hits because everybody knows the words. It's like the Beatles or Stones or Michael Jackson. Everybody knows the words. It's when those times, it's like when the emotion, when you feel that emotion and you feel that vibration, it's like somebody put that needle on the record. Everybody here is old enough to remember vinyl records. So it's like you put that needle on, you feel the vibration. That's the emotion that you feel. And usually it's like 8 bars before the lyrics kick in. It's just spinning around, you're feeling that vibration. If you know the words, go ahead and sing along, because everybody knows the words to Limiting Beliefs Greatest Hits. It sounds something like, I can't, I just don't want. That's Limiting Beliefs Greatest Hits. And the thing is, that can't possibly be true. And all you parents will definitely agree with me on this. It can't possibly be true because once again, kids this age play make-believe all the time. You ever notice when they're playing make-believe, they're telling stories about themselves. And all those stories are always empowering. I'm an army guy. I'm a baseball player. I'm a princess. It's always something powerful and positive, right? Now imagine your kids are playing make-believe and you hear them, you're probably messing with your phone, but you got them in earshot and you hear them say, hey, let's play make-believe. And your kid says, oh, I love this game. I get to be anyone I want. Who am I going to be? Oh, I know. I'm going to be the victim. He would never choose that story. You would never choose that story. That's how you know it has to be a filter. Because you would never consciously choose it. So that's your big indication that there's something there that I gotta let go. And so really understand that how life feels, if you will, is all about how these two are getting along. If the dog is trying to get his attention, because you know dogs do everything to get your attention, and the kid can't understand what the dog wants, the kid's gonna miss a lot of shit. Like my dog, Mika, she barks at everything. If the wind's blowing, she's barking. If somebody walks by the house, she's barking. If they got a dog, oh, she's barking. She can't talk. And she's always looking out because she's trying to protect me. And so imagine I'm in the kitchen heating up some leftover chicken or something, and she's looking out the window, she sees something. She wants to warn me about it. What's she gonna do? Woo, woo, woo. Now, barking is an uncomfortable sound, just like anger, fear, and guilt are an uncomfortable feeling. Every time I feel that emotion, it's my dog trying to get my attention. And why is she trying to get my attention? Because she's protecting me and she loves me. But barking is an uncomfortable sound, so what do we typically do when the dog barks? Whoo, boom. I don't want to hear it. Somebody shut that dog up. Matter of fact, put her in the room. That's how that room gets messed up like that. Because she's sitting in there going, I'm trying to help. You know what? I wanted him to be conscious of this. I'm just gonna hold on to it. I'm just gonna keep it in this room until he's ready to listen. Because I love him that much. So understand, just like barking's an uncomfortable sound, anger's an uncomfortable feeling. 5 senses, right? It's just your dog trying to get your attention because he loves you. And when I say put him in the room, I'm misinterpreting the bark. I'm misinterpreting it. If this kid cannot communicate with the dog in a way that the dog cannot misunderstand, sit, stay, lay down. Look how big and strong this dog is. If the dog can't understand what the kid wants, I don't care about that leash. He's not walking him anymore. The dog's walking the kid. And look how his face has changed. Here's the beauty of all of this. This is just a misunderstanding between best friends. That's all it is. That's all it is. And so what we need to do, what the basic instructions are about getting these two back on the same page. We've got to align our thoughts or the words we use with our emotions. We got to align our conscious mind with our unconscious mind. The kid and the dog, the head and the heart. That's what this is all about. When life feels off, that's all it is. Misunderstanding between me and me. So that's what it's really all about, is getting these two back on the same page. And so the big thing is recognizing that once we do, then life starts to feel the way we want it. That's what I learned in that bookstore that day. The world is inside. And it all depends on the story the kid's telling the dog. And so one more concept I want to go over before I get into the actual basic instructions is, the dog doesn't do logical thinking. You guys all do analysis, interpretation, logical thinking. So a lot of times I get people who ask, well, how does the dog's mind work? And so it's what I call prime directives of the unconscious mind, or how the dog works. So I'll go over these one at a time. The dog preserves and runs the body. We talked about that. Heart beating, breathing as I sleep, right? That's the dog's job. The dog makes associations. Whenever you find yourself in a situation like, this is just like the other time. That's the dog going in the room and pulling it out and making a connection between the present moment and the past. that the dog does that. Needs repetition to learn the behavior. I'm going to change this slide. What I mean by that is we need conscious behavior to learn, for the unconscious of the dog to learn. And so think about it like this. It's just like learning to drive a car. Now, how many people here know how to drive? Okay? What I want you to just consider is, when was the last time I had to consciously think about all the steps it takes to operate this machine? You haven't thought of that in forever. Just get in the car and go. Hit the button, turn the key, whatever, right? Now what I want you to do is go back in your memory to the very first time, maybe you were 14, 15, 16, the very first time you were sat behind that wheel. It was a very conscious experience, right? Very white-knuckled at 10 and 2. You turn on the volume, everyone, shh, I gotta focus. Which one's the gas and which one's the brake? And if you learn on stick, forget about it. You probably got out of the car and were like, Jesus, God, people make this look so easy. I don't know if I can ever do this. But you got back in the car and did it again. And you got back in the car and you did it again. And the kid got back in the car and did it again. And then there came that day, you stuck in the key and went, because the dog learned it. And he's been driving ever since. So in order to learn a behavior, the kid has to do something repeatedly. Like whatever Mike was teaching you in the last segment. If I do that repeatedly, the dog will learn it. It's how we learn to write our name. It's how we learn to tie our shoes. Do that conscious behavior until it goes unconscious. The functions best as a whole unit. Obviously, it functions best when the kid and the dog are getting along. So it's symbolic. And I'm missing the point here, but I'll get to that in a minute. Come back to symbolic here in a moment. So I'm gonna drop down domain of the emotions. It's the domain of the emotions, those rooms I talked about, right? That's part of the dog's job, is to keep those rooms straight. So that's where it stores memories. It represses memories with unresolved emotions. So it's like, if something's happening and the emotion's so intense that I wouldn't even be able to function, I wouldn't be able to drive a car. Or think about like a little kid who something happens and he gets really angry, angrier than he's ever been before in his life. What the dog says is, he's not gonna be able to go to school and learn. I'm gonna take this anger, I'm gonna hold it in this room until he's ready. Because I don't want him to suffer as he's going about his day. So the dog, remember, he's protecting you, he's your bodyguard. He's gonna repress memories where the emotions are too much to deal with in the moment. On the same token, he's gonna present that memory when he knows you're ready. Like working with people, I've worked with people with some pretty traumatic stuff where, somebody will all of a sudden realize that they were abused when they were a kid and they may be 30-something years old now. The dog held on to it, and now what the dog's saying is, you're ready. You're ready to handle this. Now, these two I like to leave for last. The dog is symbolic, and the dog does not process negative words directly. It's symbolic, doesn't process negative words directly. So let me connect the dots. You remember 126 bits, right? The internal representation. Whenever you get those 126 bits to the dog, it's just a symbol. And so here's the thing. If you put words to the symbol, if the kid puts words to the symbol and he says, I don't want this, the dog gets confused. All he sees is you focusing on that. And so think about it like this. You know how dogs will bring you all kinds of shit that you don't want? Dead bird, stick from outside with dirt on it, at least I hope that's dirt on it. And brings it to you because he loves these things and he loves you, so he thinks you love these things, right? So just imagine if the dog brought me a stick and I said, oh girl, I love you so much. Thank you. I know you gave me this because you love me and you love these things, but I don't. want this, okay? I don't want it. And I throw it. What's the dog gonna do? Go after it and bring it back. And I say, no, you silly dog, I love you so much, but I do not want this. And we wonder why the same problems keep coming back in our life. If I'm constantly focused on this, the dog is watching. And he's a dog. So he believes this is what you want. And then those thoughts, mind-body energy connection, those thoughts lead to our emotions, which create the filter in which we interpret things, and creates the story or the record that keeps playing. I don't want, I don't want, I don't want. And the dog's like, okay, here you go. It's like, no, you silly dog, I don't want. The big thing is, a lot of times, knowing what you don't want is important. And we keep saying no to something, and that's not bad. One thing you gotta ask yourself is, what am I saying yes to? In the work I do, a lot of times one of the first questions I ask people is like, okay, so what is it that you want? What are you looking for? And I've heard this verbatim from different people, different ages, backgrounds, black, white, candy stripe. And they'll say, I know what I don't want, but I have no clue what I want. You're gonna have to define that for the dog. Otherwise, he's gonna keep bringing you what you don't want. So these are the things we don't know. And that's what my coach from Hawaii was getting at when he said, Aohe pau ko ike ko la. Not all learning comes from your school. You know a lot of things, and those things are valuable. It's about opening up and looking at things in a different way. Because when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at start to change. And so I hope you're getting a broader perspective here. Now, I love learning from history, and sometimes situations that seem to have nothing to do with me. One of my favorite historical figures is Andrew Carnegie, the great steel magnate. This guy created steel. Probably because I'm from Pittsburgh and everything in the city is named after this guy. But I've always liked him. And in 1908, he wrote a book called The Gospel of Wealth. And in this book, he broke down all the things he did that led him to becoming the richest man the world had ever seen. And he basically wrote the basic instructions of how to do it. And the number one requisite that he indicated in this writing was that to have the type of success in life and business that he had, one must develop emotional discipline. These two gotta get along. And that's what it really comes down to. So, without further ado, you probably wonder, well, how do I do that? What do I need to do different? That's where the actual basic instructions come in. And so these are the 4 basic instructions to master your mind and your emotions. And I'll give you a second to write that down while I take a sip. So I'm gonna go through these one at a time and explain exactly how this works and how the dog and the kid get back on the same page. So basic instruction number 1, let go of the past. Now I know a lot of people are gonna say, yeah, but you don't know how hard that is. So was driving that car, right? Until you learned how to do it, until you made a habit of doing it again and again, then it became automatic. So does letting go of the past. And that's a lot of what I teach clients to do. And so what we're talking about is these rooms gotta get cleaned out. We gotta get that shit out of there. And so it's really learning how to get that out so that all of a sudden the dog's not going looking for more shit to put in there. We're picking up a different 126. And all of a sudden the dog's understanding what we're getting at better. And so really it's just about taking out what I call the head trash. Letting go of any limiting beliefs, I can't, I'm not. So you can start to feel free to move towards what you do want instead of spending my life avoiding what I don't. You gotta get in there, we gotta clean things up and really get to a point where You know, we're starting to experience life. We're starting to get back to who we were before whatever loss we believe we suffered happened. You know, there goes a point if you can't even make sense of being sad or angry if you don't know what it means to feel love or happiness. You gotta have something to compare it to. So once we get rid of all the stuff on this side of the hall, the only filters are left over here. You start to pick up a different 126 moment to moment, and life starts to look, sound, and feel different to you because we're telling a different story. And so once we get rid of all of that, all the filters are gone now. And we start to see things as they are instead of how we feel. And even back when I was 18 years old at Purdue, this was a big thing because I was deathly afraid that all of my dreams and hopes in sports were over. And even back then, I had to make sense of this so that I could get back to being who I came here to be. And so that's the big thing, is we got to get that stuff out. I'm sure you guys have questions, but we'll get to questions in a minute. So basic instruction number 1 is we've got to let go of anything that hurts. We've got to let go of anything that hurts. Once we let go of all of that, I'm feeling light, I'm feeling free, no more limiting beliefs, ball and chain holding me back. The dog's not barking, he's quiet, he's asleep right now. Next, we got to decide our specific desired result. Now, one thing I'll add is the 4 basic instructions. Think of it like a recipe. If you're following a recipe to cook a cake, you wouldn't start at step 3. You start 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. And see, the thing is, if I jump straight to my specific desired result without letting go of the past, remember the filter's in place. And so what ends up happening is I'm making a decision as to what I want through that filter. And so let's say, hypothetically, the filter was fear. Instead of setting my desired goal here, where I know it would truly fulfill me and give me that satisfaction I'm looking for, that fear filter is going to make me set it down here. And I've seen this happen time and time again. What ends up happening is you're going to hit that goal and feel disappointment. Now the filter just got thicker. And so we got to let go of the past first before we decide what it is we want to do. And so one of my favorite quotes is from Zig Ziglar, and it pertains to basic instruction number 2. He said, if you don't know where you're going, you'll probably end up somewhere else. It's like a GPS. If I don't put in a destination, all I know is where I am. I don't know how to get from where I am to where I want to be. You got to decide that. The kid who has the leash is in charge. He's got to decide that. Otherwise, the dog doesn't know where to go. And trust me, that dog will lead you somewhere else. And so that's what it really comes down to. When we talk about specific desired result, what we're talking about is goal setting, which I'm sure you've gone over in probably different language. I'm sure you've gone over that this week. So, we're talking about a new way of learning how to set goals, or should I say an old way, because it really all goes back to when we were that little kid and exercising our ability to play make-believe. And we all play make-believe. Pretend play, imaginative play is a standard part of everybody's childhood, where we imagine how we want things to be. And the thing is, even back then when I was playing make-believe and I just was saying I'm Michael Jordan, I'm Barry Sanders, I'm a superhero. Remember, I didn't say I'm gonna be a superhero. I said I am a superhero, and it made me believe that right now. With all the emotions, with that reality that comes along with that. And so that's what story am I telling myself about myself? And so when you think about words is what the kid does. The only language the dog understands is those 5 senses. So when you're thinking about setting goals, instead of just a number of pounds to lose or dollars to make, what you want to think about, or when I achieve that number, how will my life look, sound, and feel? How will my life look, sound, and feel? What am I going to see? Is it the bank balance on my banking app? Am I going to hear my wife telling me how proud she is of me? what emotions am I going to feel? And as you're creating that goal, you want to make sure that believing, imagining, getting that goal actually evokes those thoughts, those pictures, those images, those emotions. Because that's what the dog understands. And if you make that clear, he's going to get a scent and he's going to be able to find it. Remember, all he understands is these 5 senses. He's a dog. Words, stories, it confuses him. So we got to make sure that we think about, how do we want to feel when we get this? What is that going to do for me emotionally, vibrationally? To get this dude, he's your best friend. He just needs clear instructions. And so think about it. With your dog, you don't sit there and explain to the dog why he's got to get off the couch. You don't say, hey, we paid a lot for this couch. And we love you, but that shedding thing you do, I've been asking you to stop for years. If you could, get down, so just to give me a little less how. No, get down. Story will confuse the dog. You got to be able to explain it clear and simplify it down to what I see, what I hear, what I feel. The dog will get it. About what I want, not what I don't want. And so he gets a scent, and it's easy for him to pick up the scent to get you moving towards that reality. And this has actually been scientifically proven. The reticular activation system in the human mind, the reticular activation system filters and prioritizes sensory information. The reticular activation system is the function in the human brain that determines which 126 that you pick up. And this is just a part of the human neurology. And so, again, it determines what filters you pick up. If I've given the dog this scent, he's always on the lookout for it. The RAS is your internal radar. So that every day, 24/7, the dog is looking for what you do want, what you want to see, what you want to hear, what you want to feel. And so that's how we put that function, the human function, psychology, into normal functioning language. So we let go of the past. We know exactly what we want life to look, sound, and feel like. The next step is take the necessary actions that will get me that desired result. Take the necessary actions that will get me that desired result. Now, again, imagine through all the different modalities that you've learned so far through this week and stuff that's still coming up, you're going to learn some new things to do, new actions. And a lot of people, I get this all the time, even in this program, people are like, yeah, but I don't want to have to. I don't want to have to read. I don't want to have to get up and exercise. I don't want to do this. And when clients come to me with stuff like that, I go be like, okay, so what do you want? The Wizard of Oz to come and give you some courage? Remember, you saw the movie. You're gonna have to take new actions to get new results. And the thing is, this is why the basic instructions got to be done in order. I got to know my specific result, because if I don't even know what the result I'm looking for is, how do I know what action is necessary? How do I know? And so that's why you got to follow basic instructions in order. And think back to, a lot of times we do things when we have that negative filter, we take negative actions intending a positive result. It doesn't work. So like I had a friend, he was a rapper. He was signed by Jay-Z. This is back like 2007. And, people go into this business and everyone's thinks they're going to make millions of dollars and be famous, but for most people it doesn't work out that way. And his story was no different. So he was in Hollywood and, developed a drug habit and was doing some questionable things. He's sober now. He's doing good. He's a real estate agent. But for a long time, he always beat himself up for all the things he did back then. And I always reminded him, like, Slim, you got to remember when you was putting that poison up your nose, when you were drinking incessantly, when you were doing, chasing girls and having all this, doing things that you shouldn't, you realize that all you wanted to do was feel better. That's it. I just wanted to feel better. But that filter affects your judgment. But in the end, the goal was to feel better. And so when you think about the things you've done in the past to feel better, you got to ask yourself, what I've tried in the past, was I taking the necessary actions? Look at the results. You got to question that, if they were the necessary actions. And so one big thing that people run into, especially when they're having emotional difficulties, is communicating. Getting the people closest to them, business partners, spouses, children, to understand and give them what they need. Recognize that speaking is an action. Remember, we're talking about NLP, words, communication. Speaking is an action. So sometimes the necessary action that you need to learn is how to better communicate. How to better communicate. How many times has someone close to you been like, it's not what you said, it's the way you said it? That's the filter. You know that, and I should have put this slide in here, the words we use are only 7% of our communication. 7%, that's it. 55% is your physiology. Is if you're talking to them like this, it doesn't matter what you say. I fucking love you. 38% is your tone. And so learning to better communicate isn't just saying the right words. We got to make sure that as I'm speaking about love, that's the room the dog's going into. So that my physiology, mind-body energy connection, my tone match what I'm saying. And that's a big thing. Basic instruction number 1 goes a long way to handling that. So speaking is an action. And so it really all comes down to learning how to tell, not just communicating with others, with your kids, with your spouse, with other people, but learning how to talk to this dog so that he cannot misunderstand what I'm looking for here. He loves you, but he's simple. Really simple. So we got to remember that. And we talk about taking the necessary actions. There's a quote from, my favorite quote, from a guy, Don Harold, who used to write cartoons in the early 20th century. And what he said, this is a quote about unhappiness. And to me, it connected directly to basic instruction number 3. And what he said was, unhappiness is not knowing what you want and killing ourselves to get it. That's why you only want to take the necessary actions. You don't want to burn fuel, burn energy just taking action. There's a difference between being busy and being productive. And when you cut out just the busy stuff, the unnecessary shit, you're a lot more productive and it takes a lot less energy. It's really that simple. So basic instruction number 3, make sure we're taking the necessary actions and only the necessary actions. So we let go of the past. We know exactly what we want. We know what the necessary actions are when we're ready and willing to take those actions to get what we want. All that's left is basic instruction number 4, focus until. Now, a lot of people, I imagine, are wondering, well, focus until what? Focus until that specific desired result is your reality. And so it reminds me of this book, and I highly recommend it. I just had it in my bag. I took it out, actually, before I came here. The book's called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. And in this book, I'm just going to summarize, he talks about this principle that he calls the slight edge, but to even chunk down just a little bit further and explain, the way I interpret the slight edge is that everything in life, every result we get, happens gradually, then suddenly. Gradually, then suddenly, gradually, then suddenly. That's how we go broke. That's how we get rich. That's how we get fat. That's how we get skinny. Gradually, then suddenly. Now, whatever change you're looking to make in your life, I'm a big believer, you should dream as big as you possibly can. You should never hold back. When the kid was playing make-believe, did he hold back? Don't ever sell yourself short. Dream as big as you could possibly think. What is the best result you could possibly imagine for yourself? Dream that big. Just recognize that however big or however big of a shift you're looking to make, however big that goal is going to determine how long you need to focus. It might be 10 weeks. It might be 10 years. You might have a goal that goes 10 generations. Dream it. Just recognize that's going to determine how long I need to focus. And so, because everything happens gradually and suddenly, just think about getting in shape. That's how we do it. It starts the first week, first month in the gym is like hell. But you keep doing it and things start to snowball. And before you know it, you've got the results you're looking for. And so we look at that same result, those 4 basic instructions. If I let go of the past, get rid of the filters, determine exactly what I want, take the necessary actions, and focus on maintaining that discipline. For all you military and law enforcement professionals, I don't got to sit here and lecture you about discipline. You already have that tool. Oh, I think I said that earlier. You've got the tool you need. All you got to do is apply it to whatever shift you're looking to make now, and all of a sudden life feels the way you want it to. The dog is trained. And he's giving you the experience. He's going into these rooms now and bringing you shit instead of dead birds and dirty sticks. And so that's it. Let go of the past, decide your specific desired result, take the necessary action, and focus until that desired result is your life.
I had a number 5 too.
Repeat? I can definitely appreciate that. That's actually part of number 4. So sometimes the way I put it, thank you for that. Sometimes the way I put it is, number 4 really means following 1, 2, and 3 again and again and again and again. Basic instructions. So, one thing I want you guys to really understand is that you're in control. You got the leash. That's what I put. You're in control. You have the leash. You're in control of this dog. So whatever you feel, recognize that I'm causing that through my filters, through my interpretations, which lead to my actions, so on and so forth.